What's up, Fantasy League enjoyers? It's your reigning defending. I can't actually. It's too cringe. I did win last season though, and I don't know how it happened. Like really, I was consistent. I was aiming for a top five, and then suddenly towards the end, I just picked up this really good consistent run of form and managed to somehow finish top. Even that being said, though, it came down to quite literally the last map of the grand finals of the major. With Spirit winning, it secured me top spot. If FaZe had have won or come back, then Nart would have been top position and I'd have been in second. So it was super close, down to the wire. Well played to everyone last season. I'm really happy to have won, of course, and it really exceeded my expectations. And so going into this season, I'm going to be looking for roughly the same. I'll be looking for a top five. I'll do my best. I'll try and be consistent. But ultimately, I think top five is a fair one to go for, especially with how good some of these other people are in the league. I feel very fortunate to have actually got the win in the end. It's starting pretty rough, though, I'm going to be honest. Like, this is going to be a very tough tournament to nail and get right. I think there's going to be some big surprises, some big shocks, some big upsets. And that's just because of the nature of it being 32 teams in this event with no lower bracket. So it's effectively the first match you play is an elimination match. The winner will go through to the quarterfinals. The loser is done. They are out. Saving grace is it is best of threes, so you don't have to worry about a best of one coin flip, but there is no safety net here. Now, the other component of that, of course, the elephant in the room, is that there has been a ton of roster changes in nearly every single team. It is important to mention, though, and this will also factor into some of the choices that you might want to go for and that I've gone for, is that in the top five teams, three of them have made no roster changes. So Spirit, no roster changes, Na'Vi, no roster changes, and Mouse, no roster changes. Mouse, importantly, managing to keep Jimmy in the team, and Na'Vi and Spirit saw no reason to make roster changes. The one roster move that maybe people were expecting was Magix to be replaced by somebody else, but that hasn't happened. Maybe it will. I doubt it, though. It looks like they want to stick together. Understandable after just winning a major, of course. But so many of these teams have made vast changes to their rosters, and so that's always going to kind of throw a bit of a spanner in the works in terms of who to expect to come out here swinging. Even within the teams that haven't made roster changes, you have to factor in that maybe they've made changes in terms of their strategies and their tactics and how they want to kind of utilize players in different positions and different things like that. So even if a team hasn't made a roster change, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be playing the same level of Counter-Strike as we saw going into the end of 2024. Now, with that all being said, let's jump into our opening fixtures here to get a better feel for which teams that we may be just kind of moving towards. FlyQuest take on MIBR, 3D Max against Heroic, Liquid and Nine Pandas, Spirit and Fnatic. That's day one. Again, best of threes, elimination games, or progression to quarterfinals will be there for the winners. Day two, Astralis and Wildcard. Saw take on Big, Falcons and Ents, and then Vitality lock horns with Metasport. Day three, Complexity and VP. Tons of changes between these two teams, which I will discuss a little bit more in a few moments. Eternal Fire and Fluxo, FaZe and M80, and then Na'Vi take on the only female team at this tournament, which is Imperial Female. And of course, this is something that we just don't see very often. It's a really cool idea. I hope that we see it more in the future. It would be great to get more integrated teams when it comes to like getting the female teams up into the other events and see how they fare. Unfortunately for Imperial Female, it's like, hey, do you want to come and join a big event with tons of opportunities? Like, yeah, cool, sounds great. You're against Na'Vi in the first game, though, by the way. It's like, oh, bro. But hey, like, listen, if you want to make a declaration and show just how good these players are, if you can take down Na'Vi, that's going to turn a lot of heads. I will say, though, for Imperial Female, by the way, for those of you who don't really watch a lot of the female Counter-Strike out there, they have Anna in their team. They're also one of the best female teams, if not the best. And Anna won the Female Player of the Year. She's a really, really good player. So definitely a player to watch out for as they go up against Na'Vi. You could argue as well, first game of the year, probably the best time to play against Na'Vi, actually. They might be coming in cold, may not be feeling at 100%. Maybe there's a chance of an upset. I doubt it, though. Last day of the first fixtures will be Pain and Gamer Legion, Fury and Amiga, Mouse against BetBoom, and then G2 take on Bait. So those are the fixtures. So some of these fixtures definitely has leaned me into a certain direction, which I'm going to show you now. I've double stacked Na'Vi. It's really cool to see Imperial Female here, but I don't see how they can take down this juggernaut. The best team of last year consistently across the board. Yes, Spirit beat them to the major. Yes, Spirit had Donk, who's got player of the year and everything else. But I think you look at Na'Vi, and for me, they were the most consistent team last year. They dipped a little bit at the major, which was a shame. They kind of fell off just a tad. But I believe going into this new season that they're going to be up there as one of the best teams again. And I think that Imperial Female, yes, maybe they can take a map off Na'Vi, perhaps, but I doubt it, and I think Na'Vi can lock this one in. To be honest, it didn't really matter who Na'Vi were playing unless it was like one of the other top teams like a Mouse or a Spirit. I would have gone for double Na'Vi anyway, especially when I see these prices. I think they're a lot more reasonable than some of the other ones that I'll discuss in a moment. The only price I felt like was a bit too steep was Alexi B. 200k for Alexi kind of stings, I've got to be honest. I was almost thinking about switching him for Chopper and trying to upgrade one of these other players, just up like an extra 4k, but I decided to go for double Na'Vi because ultimately I think that they are going to be the best team coming out of the player break. I have a lot of faith in these guys to get it done. So the bulk of my resources, 416 out of a million, has gone to Na'Vi. That meant I had to skimp a little bit on my other three players. So I've gone for Fame, who's 199k. It's a gamble. There's no two ways around this. I said I was going to discuss VP and complexity just a little bit more in a few moments, and it's because I've gone for Fame. Now, Fame at 199 I think is really good value for money, but there is a caveat to this. There's a big asterisk next to that one, and it's the fact this team is like almost completely shifted. Like, no longer is James the IGL. He's not in the team anymore. Norbert's also not in the team anymore. Norbert, for me, was super underrated as a player. I think he got the short end of the stick. Real team player, real role player, was trying to do whatever the team needed. And so I'm curious to see who's going to fit in some of those roles now that the change has come in so drastically. And then on top of that, you got Icy, who's a way more aggressive AWPer than Jame. He's also just a more consistent AWPer than Jame, I'd have to say. But the biggest piece of this is Electronic now IGLing. Now, when you consider that Electronic is taking over the IGL and two players have moved in, including like the supportive element being taken out, I don't really know what to expect from these guys. In the past, I've been burnt by Electronic in terms of his IGLing, in terms of him joining VP in the first place. I was expecting great things, and it never really delivered. And so, although people are going to inevitably say, oh, Electronic IGLing is a lot more exciting than Jame, there's no guarantees it's going to be a success, right? There's no guarantee that this is going to be the be-all, end-all fix for this VP roster. And so it's so early in this transition across this rotation of IGLing and two players coming in that it could be a success, but it could also backfire spectacularly. So Fame is a gamble, but I think he's good enough, and this VP squad is powerful enough, especially considering they're against complexity in their first game, which I'll kind of touch on now, to get the job done for at least one win, and who knows. And because he's only 199k, if he gets some positive points, but not that many, it's okay. I've got JL, I've got Alexi, hopefully, to carry me through for the rest of the tournament. So speaking of complexity, it's a rough one. Like, if we're being objective about this, they've got the short end of the stick when it comes to the roster changes, I should say. They lost Elige, who is going to be almost impossible to replace, right? Like, He's a phenomenal rifler. He often was the main shining light on a team that was often very inconsistent and honestly underperformed and disappointed a lot of the time. Hulzerk as a player is so up and down. He's like a roller coaster AWPer. He can have great games, can have horrible games. Grim was starting to find a bit more consistency towards the end of last season, but I think Elige was like the pillar of this team. He was the guy that could have those maps where he dropped 30 and just solo carry. Now, I don't know much about the two players that have come in, if I'm being completely honest. I don't have high expectations. I hope they prove me wrong. But I think this is almost perfect for VP to go into their first game with a team that has a lot less firepower, a team that is in a position where it too is in flux and like a state of changing. And I think this is a chance for VP to establish themselves pretty early on. It is a bit of a coin flip, but I'm going to go with Fame on that, just purely off the basis of his price. And kind of a similar feeling with JKS. I feel like with JKS, I know kind of what to expect from him at this point. I will put the caveat in that I'm not completely sold on Liquid right now, and it's nothing to do with Nerds. I think Nerds is a phenomenal pickup, honestly. He could have easily gone to like a FaZe. He could have easily gone to like maybe even Vitality or somebody like that. but he's gone to Liquid, and this team right now on paper looks amazing. But there's a few things that just got me a little bit concerned about them. First off, I'm still not completely sold on Twist's IGLing. His individual performances have definitely been kind of hurt by the decision to IGL. And this is often the case, right? A lot of IGLs fall quite hard in terms of individual performances. It kind of comes with the job, it comes with the territory. He's only 25. Has he jumped the ship too early? I'm not too sure. If he can find that perfect balance between IGLing and being a consistent fragger, maybe not at the dizzying heights as we saw of him in FaZe and previously at Liquid, but if he can just put out decent performances and be a good IGL, that's maybe all they need. But it's also Ultimate dropped off quite a bit, and he's had his own kind of interviews and his own statements about this, saying he's very aware of the fact he dropped off quite a lot. When he first joined Liquid, it was like, this is an amazing pickup. Like, he's this incredible Polish AWPer that barely anyone's ever heard of before, and now he's just coming in and bodying like top flight AWPers, but he did drop off towards the end. But the other element of this that concerns me just a little bit is the roles within Liquid, because you can argue all you want about how poor Yekindar was in terms of his stats, and yes, he had a resurgence at the major, but it just wasn't enough ultimately. And Nertz is definitely an improvement in a 1-to-1 sort of like firepower ratio, but who is going to be like that entry fragger now? Who is going to be the guy that's going to be going in first? It could be JKS. It could be. We've seen him play aggressive roles in the past, going way back when to like Renegades, etc. I don't know what to expect, though. I'm not sure if Nertz is going to take a while before he grows into this team, and the team themselves grow into finding out what their kind of solution is going to be, what their identity is going to be in that regard. We'll have to wait and see. But again, JKS has often done me solidly whenever I've picked him up, and I do think that like Nertz, even for all the things I've just talked about, by the way, I still think this Liquid team right now is stronger than it was before. So I'm still going to back them. And then Kixam. Falcons, it's not quite the roster that people were envisaging and hoping for, but I still think it's pretty solid, all things considered, and some people may be sleeping just a little bit on Falcons. You've got the 3-player core from Heroic, with obviously Kixan, Dexter, and Tesses, and then you've got Nico and Magisk. Very solid lineup as 5, but I think it may take a while before things kind of move into position. And the one weak link on this team, and some people may disagree, but I'll be completely real about this, I am not fully sold on Dexter just yet. I was massively frothing at the mouth to see where he was going to go after his Spirit performances years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and he went to OG, and everyone, myself included, was a bit like, huh? Like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, why OG out of all the opportunities he had? Apparently, almost every team wanted him because he was so good back then. And then he just kind of languished away and sort of faded into obscurity over on OG. Got the Heroic opportunity. Everyone's super pumped and hyped. Loads of visa issues, which I'm sure definitely affected his performances and mentality. And although he did have some great performances at the major, I have not seen enough consistency from Dexter to really fully believe in his ability right now. I could be proven wrong. I hope I am proven wrong. I hope he comes into the server and he's just dishing up kills left and right. But I'm still a little bit unsure of Dexter as an AWP. That being said, though, in a team with this much firepower, like Tessis and Nico together is really solid, by the way. Magisk as well can just pop off. There is a lot to be excited about with this Falcons roster, and Kixan in particular is one of those IGLs that I think goes under the radar just a little bit when it comes to his fragging capabilities. So he's up at a 1.0 rating. Obviously, this is just the last 3 months, going mainly off the major basis. But you will often see Kixan post up some big numbers when he was playing for Heroic with some great players alongside him, like Nertz, like Tesses in particular. So I think for 187k coming into this event, Nico probably with a few points to prove, after a lot of people have kind of been like laughing at the fact that the idea originally obviously was like Nico, m0NESY, and Jimmy together, and it was just like this crazy team that everyone was loving the idea of. It didn't pay off that way, but I think he's got a point to prove, and there is more than enough moving pieces in this team to make them a real threat. They go up against ENCE in their first game as well. And I mean, no disrespect to ENCE here, but they have been consistently disappointing ever since, I think, Katowice of last year. Realistically, it was like Diha, once he got that contract extension, kind of just dropped off. We saw Hades not really getting consistency either, and Glaive was just kind of like left in this weird doldrum of trying to rebuild this team multiple times. So I mean, you go down to NCA, they're all the way at the bottom. Nietu is a pretty interesting player, but I've got to say, looking across at that roster, it doesn't give me that much faith that they can beat Falcons and actually get like into a really solid position. The other thing I should mention as well, just at the end, is how cheap the Imperial female players are. But of course, you have to put that with the caveat, like 155, 153, 160k for Ana, by the way. She's a really good player. But of course, the problem is they're against Na'Vi, and it's a knockout game. So if you go for someone like Ana, and they get just absolutely crushed, like 2-0, you're probably on negative points at that stage, and you're probably not going to get too much out of that. But if you want to like double stack on really solid players and then go for like a budget player of Ana, who by the way could still get positive points, she could still get a lot of kills in this game, then maybe that's the way to go. Just food for thought really on that one. But that's going to be the team that I'm going to lock in here. We've got ourselves multi-frag on JL, eco-friendly Kixan, defender JKS, Fame on support, and then leader for Alexi B, because I do think they're going to potentially even win the whole tournament, but definitely should get 1 or 2 wins. So comment below, let me know what you think on this one, who you've gone for, and here's to another season of Fantasy League. Hopefully we get in the top 5, maybe even the top 3 once again. Catch you next time.